They lived in glittering palaces, draped in silk, and crowned with jewels. Yet behind the velvet curtains, the lives of royal women were far less glamorous than we imagine. History books often praise their beauty and elegance, but the truth is shocking. Today, we're diving into the most disgusting hygiene habits of royal women in history, secrets they tried to hide beneath perfume, powder, and luxury. Catherine the Great's chamber pot etiquette. The Russian Empress ruled with an iron fist, but her personal habits shocked foreign visitors. Catherine's palaces often lacked proper bathrooms, so she relied heavily on ornate chamber pots, even during social gatherings. Servants sometimes emptied them in hallways or gardens, creating a stench that clashed with the grandeur of her court. Though she was one of the most powerful women in history, her royal lifestyle involved hygiene practices that seem barbaric today. Marie Antoinette's dirty hairdos. The French queen's towering hairstyles were engineering marvels, sometimes 3 feet tall and decorated with jewels, ribbons, or even miniature ships. But here's the disgusting truth. These elaborate wigs and hairpieces were rarely washed. They attracted lice, fleas, and sometimes even rodents. Servants used pomade, made from animal fat, to hold the hair in place, making it rancid after days of wear. Beneath her pearl-studded crowns, Marie Antoinette was fighting a secret war against pests. Mary, Queen of Scots, and the rotting baths Mary. Stuart loved her baths, unlike many royals of her time. But her habit came with problems. She bathed in aromatic oils and wine, believing they preserved her beauty. Yet the tubs were rarely cleaned properly, leaving behind residue that bred bacteria. Worse, the oils clung to her skin and hair, turning rancid in the absence of soap. To outsiders, she was a tragic beauty. Yet up close, her private rituals left her smelling less than royal. Empress Elizabeth of Austria's greasy hair rituals, known as Sisi. Elizabeth of Austria was obsessed with her beauty. Her hair was legendary, cascading almost to her ankles. But maintaining it was a nightmare. She washed it with raw egg yolks and brandy, a mixture that left behind a greasy, sour smell. Washing took hours, so she only did it once every 3 weeks. Between washes, her hair was coated in oils, perfume, and sweat, attracting dust and insects. Behind her angelic portraits, the Empress carried a secret burden of sour-smelling beauty. Queen Victoria's corset filth. The 9th century monarch is often remembered as prim and proper, but her undergarments tell a grosser story. Victoria wore tight corsets that weren't washed for weeks, sometimes months. The sweat, oils, and skin cells trapped in the fabric created foul odors and stains. Servants occasionally tried to clean them, but Victorian etiquette demanded modesty, making laundry infrequent. The woman who presided over an empire wore garments that would shock modern noses. Isabella of Castile and the Holy Dirt, Queen Isabella, who financed Columbus's voyage, was celebrated as a devout Catholic. But her hygiene was another matter. It's said she bathed only twice in her lifetime, once at birth and once before her wedding. Convinced that bathing opened the body to disease and sin, Isabella wore the same clothes for months at a time, layering perfume and holy relics instead of soap and water. The queen who shaped global history may have carried the stench of sanctity everywhere she went.
Catherine de' Medici's deadly perfumes. The glamorous queen of France in the 16th century adored perfumes. But these weren't just pleasant fragrances. Catherine used heavy, oil-based perfumes to mask her body odor, as bathing was rare and considered dangerous. Her court reeked of overwhelming scents, sometimes laced with toxic substances like mercury. While she dazzled in public, her skin absorbed chemicals that contributed to poor health, all in the name of masking natural smells.
Queen Christina of Sweden's refusal to bathe. Christina of Sweden, the eccentric 17th century monarch, stunned her contemporaries not only with her refusal to marry, but also with her lack of hygiene. She hated bathing and considered water dangerous, often claiming it weakened the body. Reports suggest she rarely washed, preferring to mask her odor with perfumes and heavy clothing. Visitors were appalled at the smell of her chambers, describing them as stuffy, sour, and unfit for royalty. While she dazzled with her wit, her personal hygiene left much to be desired. Queen Caroline of Ansbach's rotten teeth. The wife of King George II of Britain, Caroline of Ansbach, enjoyed sweets and sugared wines in excess. But dental hygiene in the 18th century was nearly non-existent. Caroline's teeth rotted badly, and her breath became notoriously foul. Courtiers whispered that it was difficult to stand near her during audiences. Despite her elegance, Caroline's smile was a painful reminder that royal wealth couldn't buy clean teeth or fresh breath. Infanta Maria Teresa of Spain's greasy rituals. The Spanish princess Maria Teresa, who married into the French royal family in the 17th century, followed a peculiar beauty routine. She rubbed animal fat and strange oils into her skin, believing it would keep her youthful and soft. But the result was often the opposite: sticky, greasy skin that quickly turned rancid in the absence of proper bathing. Servants found her chambers filled with the sour odor of rotting oils, making her more infamous than admired at the French court. Tsarina Anna Ivanovna's frozen stench. The 18th century Russian Empress Anna Ivanovna was infamous for her cruel sense of humor and lavish banquets. But her winter palaces often reeked, despite the freezing climate. She wore heavy layers of fur that were rarely cleaned, saturated with sweat and body oils. In the cold, these odors clung even longer, trapped within her clothing. To mask the stench, she relied on overwhelming amounts of perfume. But guests noted that the scent of rotting furs and sweat always lingered beneath the surface. Have you ever wondered what medieval royalty smelled like? Well, if you're imagining lavender-scented halls and fragrant queens, think again. Today, we're diving into the grungy, nitty-gritty world of Queen Isabella of Spain, often remembered as a devout queen who funded Columbus's journey across the Atlantic. But Isabella had another legacy, a much less glamorous one. Let's set the stage. 15th century Spain, an era of grand castles, religious devotion, and unfortunately, questionable hygiene practices. Queen Isabella, like many of her contemporaries, believed that bathing was not only unnecessary, but downright sinful. She proudly claimed to have only ever bathed twice in her life, once at birth and once on her wedding day. Yes, you heard that right. Twice. The logic behind this aversion. In Isabella's devout Catholic belief system, physical cleanliness was thought to erode one's spiritual strength. As wild as it sounds to us today, many believed that water, especially warm water, could open up the pores and let in disease. So instead of regular baths, perfumes and heavy clothing were employed to mask odors. And speaking of heavy clothing, Queen Isabella was a fan of wearing the same outfit for months. She adorned herself in elaborate gowns day after day, often layered thick to ward off the cold. But do you know what thrives on unwashed garments? Lice. Records suggest her personal maids were often employed to delice her clothing, a tedious task that sometimes involved literally scraping dead lice and eggs off her dresses. Imagine the horror. But it didn't stop there. One can only imagine the state of her court's hygiene, a room full of unbathed nobles and servants raising quite the stink. And with all this, Isabella still managed to woo foreign dignitaries and rule over one of the most powerful nations of the time. Some argue her tolerance for filth was even seen back then as a kind of commitment to piety and humility. Now, before you judge her too harshly, remember, this wasn't exclusive to Queen Isabella. Throughout Europe, royalty and commoners alike shared these grim habits. Hygiene as we know it today simply didn't exist. So next time you think skipping a shower is no big deal, ask yourself, channeling Queen Isabella today, are we? It's a pungent reminder of how far we've come in the hygiene department. Hit that like button if you're grateful for modern plumbing and toiletries.